Good evening, everyone. I'm Supreet Kaur Saluja, and I'm the Chief Strategic Partnerships and New Ventures Officer for Girl Scouts of the USA. I'm so excited to present to you our Campfire Chat Run for It, presented in partnership with the Citi Foundation. The Citi Foundation works to promote economic progress and improve the lives of people in low-income communities around the world, investing in efforts that increase financial inclusion, catalyze job opportunities for youth, and reimagine approaches to building economically vibrant communities. Today, we'll be talking about how more women governing benefits local economies and sharing the tools, the language, and the perspective to run. Even if you've never thought about running, you'll walk away with guidelines on the do's and don'ts for advocating for your community and making a difference in your and your neighbors' lives. Our founder, Julie Gordon Lowe, created the Girl Scouts in 1912 as a movement that would inspire girls to make a real difference. Whether you call it advocacy, patriotism, or civic duty, Girl Scouts have always looked for ways to improve the world around them. Before I introduce our guest speakers, I'd love to tell you about the Girl Scout Network. We're a community of adults, Girl Scout alum and supporters from across the country who feel passionately about supporting girls and one another. If you're connecting with us now, welcome back into the Girl Scout sisterhood. During our campfire chats, successful women, many of them Girl Scout alum, share their stories to both educate and inspire. We'd also like to extend a special welcome to the current Girl Scout ambassadors and seniors in the audience. We can't wait to welcome you into the Girl Scout Network when you graduate the program and become alums. One more thing before we get started. We'll be moderating the chat log and sharing your questions for the panelists, so don't be afraid to ask away. And if you're inclined to share what you've learned, please tag your social posts with hashtag Campfire Chats and @GirlScouts. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce you to our moderator, Jean Sinzak, Associate Director, Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University. Welcome, Jean. Jean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. We are going to have a terrific hour with 4 amazingly talented and knowledgeable women. So what I'm going to do is going to introduce each of our panelists, and as I call them onto the call, I will ask them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. Let me start with Kat Calvin, the founder of Spread the Vote. There she is. Welcome, Kat. If you would tell us, a little bit about your job in your organization and, why it's so important for girls and young women to get politically engaged, and if you have any connections to Girl Scouts.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with that. I was a Daisy and a Brownie and a junior and loved Girl Scouts. I still remember making paper mache when I was a Daisy and I loved Girl Scouts. It's the best. And Girl Scout camp, I could go on forever. I miss Girl Scout days. If there's a way to be an adult Girl Scout, if we can have adult troops or something, I will sign up. I will sell cookies. I'll buy the cookies myself.
And I'll join your troop.
This is now happening. So yeah, Girl Scouts were a huge part of my life and childhood. And now I'm the founder and executive director of Spread the Vote, which is a nonprofit organization that helps people do a couple of things. So a big thing that we do is we help people get ID cards, government issued photo ID like you get at the DMV, so that they can get jobs, housing, medical care, all sorts of things. But you also need ID in 36 states to vote. So it helps them be able to vote. And then we do a lot of voter education work. I help people get to the polls. Right now, we've got staff all over the country driving people to the polls and handing out snacks and lines and all sorts of things to help make sure that people are able to vote. And I'm also the co-founder and CEO of the Project ID Action Fund, which is actually an organization in which we support candidates, so far all women, I'm trying to stick to that 100% record, who are running for office, mostly local office, and advocate for a political change that we'd like to see. And I think that when we think about why is it important for girls and women to be involved, I mean, really the question is like, why wouldn't it be? We're over half the population, and we should be involved. And we only know our experience, and women and girls tend to think about issues in a different way. And when you look at studies of governments that are run by women, of companies that are run by women, or that have more women on boards, they're almost always more, well, pretty much always more successful, more profitable. They govern, countries and states and cities that have a happier, more productive workforce. I'm not going to say that's because women are better than men. I'm just going to say that's what the data says, and who am I to argue with the data? I think that it's really important for us to understand, and for girls especially to understand, that you have the power from a very young age to shape what your world looks like. I right now am constantly talking to young women who are 13, 14, 15, and they're leading organizations and they're activists, and they've decided that they care about climate change or education, and that they're getting involved now. They're not going to wait until they're adults. And that's incredible, because adults have no idea what it's like to be in high school right now. They have no idea what it's like to be living your life. And so if you don't advocate for yourself and for your friends and your classmates, then who will?
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome. So next, let me introduce Erin Luz Cutraro. Is she there? There you are.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. It's so great to be here. And Kat just did such a lovely job of explaining all of the reasons why it's important for us to all come together. So I echo so many of the things that she said. I'm the founder and CEO of She Should Run. We are an organization that works to see more women realize the possibility in leadership in elected office. So if you sort of picture making a candidate as a funnel, and out the bottom comes the funnel, we're at the very, very top. So we're often talking to women who are really just coming to this for the very first time and just not even sure they want to do it. But I think, look, I think all change starts at the very beginning, at the youngest age. I have two young daughters, an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I've seen it with them as well, of just the forces that exist that make it challenging for them to sort of connect that power of voice that they have, and how much work we have to do as a society to make that better for all girls and women. And I was a Girl Scout. I was actually going to date myself here. I was a Pixie. That was a thing. I believe a pilot program. I was a Pixie, and then I was a Brownie, and then I was a Girl Scout. So I have really fond memories of my experience in Girl Scouts.
Wonderful. Welcome. Now let me turn to Sarah Blanco, Program Director at Running Start. There we are. Hi, Sarah.
There I am. Hello, everybody. So I'm also very excited to be here, and I will start off by saying that I did not do anything with the Girl Scouts myself. My mom was a Brownie, and I'm in the 60s, and she loved it. But I really, really would like to join Kat's adult troop, so please send me an invitation. And I have to kind of just sign on to everything that Kat and Erin already said about why all of our work collectively is so important, and just add that at Running Start, our nonpartisan work is focused on girls and very young women, specifically because it's very easy for girls and young women to lose their confidence and ambition as they grow into adults and start making decisions about what they're going to do with their lives. And so if the work that She Should Run does is this funnel, we're kind of making sure that we're aiming the poor like into the funnel. Like we want them to actually land there and not dissipate into nothingness. So that's what we're all about.
Welcome, Sarah. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Erin Velarde, the founder of Boat Run Lead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with the Girl Scouts. I'm the founder of Boat Run Lead, and we train women to run for office and win. And I was not a Girl Scout, but my sister was a Brownie and slept in her Brownie uniform the day before her first class, her first session. And that is a story that my mom loves to tell. I think by the time it got to me, I was number 4 out of 5 children. Extracurricular activities were cut. But my nieces are Brownies. I actually just checked in with them before this call to tell them what I was doing and make sure that they were registered and tuning in. So At Vote Run Lead, we are training, we have over 300 women who are on the ballot this year in 2020, and as a nonpartisan 501c3, that's really exciting. And 95% of them are running for state and local office. You know, we have a handful of amazing women in Congress, and hopefully a few more that will help usher in 2020. But our expertise is really, you know, how do you get started, and how do you do it in maybe 2, 4, or 6 years? So if you're, you know, raising your hand to run, or you're jumping into a race right now, and you're like, oh my God, I'm not sure exactly how to do this, you know, Vote Run Lead is the place to help you and hold your hand along the way as you know, create a winning candidacy and win and talk to your neighbors in a different way than you ever have before.
Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to jump right into it because we don't have a lot of time, and we have so many things we want to share and so many actionable steps for all of you who are joining us tonight. So, you know, what we're talking about tonight is running for local office, and we all know, I mean, there's a lot of attention paid at the national level, right? So, you know, people pay attention to presidential races and congressional races because they just happen to be in the news. But we all know that so much policy making that directly impacts our lives happen at the local level. So we're talking city council, school board, mayor, all the way up, you know, until you get to county offices, and then, you know, state legislative offices, which are a little hyper local, but, you know, still a little closer to home, right? So I would love to hear each of your perspectives on, you know, why running for local office is so important for making an impact, so that we can start this conversation with that context. And I think, I don't know if anyone wants to jump in, or if you want me to just rotate. I can call, you know, maybe I'll rotate. I'll start with, because you were second, I'm going to start with you, Erin Luz Catraro, and then we'll rotate through people that way. Sorry, I knocked my table.
Absolutely. So, you know, it's really interesting. We're sort of, as a country, I think we're pretty obsessed with talking about the highest level office. And sometimes that's for really good reason. But one of the casualties of that is that we don't often talk about the value of local office. And the reality is that if you picture, you know, the over 500,000 elected offices in our country, and the percentage of those that are at the federal level, it's like a tiny slice at the federal level. You know, over 99% of the offices actually fall at the state and local level. And so what we talk about a lot in the She Should Run community is, you know, these are the issues that, you know, are showing up in your backyard. They're showing up in your local coffee shops. They're showing up in your schools with the way that your town is governed. You know, the people who are in positions of power that have the most control over your day-to-day lives and those details in your community are the people who are serving in local office. And you know, it's we're not reaching our full potential if we're not tapping into all of the incredible talent that women bring to the table. And so, you know, that's really, if you care about your community and you care about that connection, that's local office.
Thank you so much. Sarah, your perspectives?
Yeah, so I think the other important piece of that is kind of the pipeline to leadership. So if you want to eventually see women in places like Congress, you need them to have the seniority and the experience that they can gain often at the local level, although you can jump straight to Congress if you would like. And the other part of that is getting to know your community by serving local office means that if you do want to seek higher office later, you have much more experience and knowledge about what's going on and what people need than you would otherwise. So building that pipeline is another piece as well.
Thank you. Erin?
Local office is fun. Local office is talking to your neighbors. Local office is people that you know and you're familiar with, and it is solving problems that your neighbors, you know, have that, you know, are sometimes big and sometimes silly, right? But you know who you're dealing with. The hyper-partisan stuff, that jazz that we see at the federal level, really shrinks down at the local level, right? People are human to human when it comes to our local politics, which is still there. And so many seats at the local level are nonpartisan. We have so many women who are running for the local level who are like, you know, I thought I was maybe going to run for the state legislature, or, you know, I want to run for higher office, but man, I miss sitting on the county commission, or man, I miss sitting on the city council, you know? So you really do, you get to have a good time, and it's manageable, right? A city council meeting in a mid-sized town is Monday nights, once a month. There's a lot of reading. So if you're a good avid reader, you're going through bills, you're thinking things through, you're talking to your community about their perspective. Some things change, like you can't really go to the supermarket in your sweats. You have to go in like your nice sweats, but local office is one of those places where you can contribute to your community in a meaningful way. You're not going to make a ton of money off of it, but you're going to be able to look back at those 4 or 8 years, maybe 12, and say, wow, I made a difference where I live. And I think that's what makes it exciting for folks who are considering, a community board, a city council office, or, maybe even that mayor's seat one day, because that executive power actually is really where it's at.
Thank you so much. Kat?
Well, everybody gave all the good answers already.
Yeah.
+1 to everything that everyone said. But I think the last thing that I would say, to sort of sum a lot of that up too, is when you are starting, and particularly like when you're running as a woman, and it can be a little more difficult statistically for us to do things like raise money. And when you're running for local office, those offices are usually really, really inexpensive, and they're really good ways to build relationships. So if you start on the water reclamation board or city council or something like that, then it's very local. It's a race where you have to raise less money, where you can really bring your friends and family around you, and then you can build from there. And then you can take those relationships and say, okay, well, I did city council, now I want to do mayor, now I want to be in the state legislature, now I want to be governor or in Congress, and you bring all of those relationships and those donors and that experience with you, so that then you're ready to be president. And so you really like being able to start local and stack the experience and the achievements and the relationships with you. It's only going to help you. And then if you decide that you don't want to run for higher office, that you did your term on the school board and it was great, you have those relationships and that experience that you can take for whatever your next career is, and it's going to be invaluable to you.
Oh, thank you all. I'm going to pose another question to all of you, but you don't all have to take it. If you want to jump in, you can. I also have some specific questions for each of you, but this next one I'll pose to all of you, which is, if you have any examples of the difference you've seen women make in office in your communities, either examples of people who've been through your programs or just, women public leaders you've seen in particular, to sort of give us some context for the impact that you can make. Anyone want to jump in?
I'll start with one thing.
Go ahead, Kat.
There was this fantastic meme that maybe you saw, but when we looked at, with this COVID crisis happening, the countries that had the lowest rates of COVID and the lowest deaths, they were almost all countries led by women. So there you go.
There you go.
I love that example. I was thinking of there's a woman in our community. I was just so moved by her, and we see this a lot, like what motivated her to step up. So she was somebody who got really interested, sort of technical, got really interested in like zoning rules in her town. And she collaborated with all of her neighbors to come up with a plan that she was going to go present before the city council. And what she found was that there was like this real power in that collaboration. And we see that often, women are so willing, not the only ones, but so willing and upfront and kind of lead from that place of collaboration. I think it just changes the game.
So we're taking a deep look at the state legislatures and looking at where we have seen women, from 2018 to really have this momentum. Jean, the research shows that when women are either at a third or maybe just under it, we start to really see changes in how the behavior of the body works. Right. And so at the state legislative level, we have seen, just like our opening speaker said, where there was a big jump for the number of women who got into the state ledge, or where there were 40% or higher, you saw budgets being passed on time. You saw common sense gun reform. You saw the number of bills that actually got passed out of the legislature increase the number of bipartisan and co-sponsors that were on those bills. So the efficiency of government really does go up when women are in office, and are in office in large enough numbers where they can kind of control the flow of how things are happening, especially with chairmanships or chairwomanships. And so that impact we've seen, the other thing we're seeing that it really excites me is, you know, whether it's a state legislature or a city councilor here in New York City, we have a state legislator in Colorado pushing, you know, paid family leave, which is overwhelmingly a bipartisan issue for women of every party, and including independents. And it, especially with COVID-19, where we are potentially seeing the gains women have made around care and family and job responsibilities and our ability to be in the workforce really, really change with this sort of she-cession. Like, that word never comes out right, but the sort of this economic recession. If paid family leave is gaining momentum, and the people that are putting those bills forth at the city and state level are almost always women and moms who know that these choices are just, you know, we need help. We need the community to sort of come together. We need our government, our private sector, and individuals to all do their part to make sure that our families and our economies locally are healthy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Well, I
Sarah.
was going to add, I have one small story about the way women can change the conversations at a really local level. So there is a college student out in West Lafayette, Indiana. She goes to Purdue. She, I think, just finished her sophomore year. Her name is Shannon King, and she is an alum of Running Start. And she and one of her colleagues are the newest members of the council and also the only women on the council. And so this year, they supported efforts to kind of talk about and change things around access to menstrual products at city facilities, which should have always been important because so many people, like, you know, half the population might need that at any point, but it just wasn't something that people were paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've all touched upon this idea, right? That women bring a different perspective and life experience that may or may not be there, right? And that's so crucial. And wherever they are, whoever they are, they're all from different walks of life. We need women of all kinds, right? So it's not just, you know, women aren't a monolith. They have different perspectives and different backgrounds and different life experiences. And so we need more women at the table so they can all, you know, bring their own perspectives. It's really helpful. And one thing that was mentioned about the women who went to the zoning meetings or just got involved made me think of you know, we're thinking about practical, actionable steps that people can take right now if they're thinking about getting involved. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard in a session was, in a campaign training session, was a woman who didn't know where to get started and, you know, cared about environmental issues in her town. So she just decided, instead of thinking like, how do I have to do this big, huge campaign? She just decided that she would start going to the town environmental commission meetings. So we can tell everyone who's on this, if you don't know, there are commissions and town council meetings. They're public. I mean, right now you can't be there in person. Now it might be easier to go because you don't have to leave your house, right? Like you just watch them virtually. But she decided she would go and ask a question at each one of these meetings, at every meeting for the next several months. She would go, listen, ask 8 questions. So she made a name for herself. And she also learned a lot. And so that might be one practical. It's a small step, but it was easy for her to grasp, right? So we can all be thinking about those kinds of tips, and you all have raised some good tips so far. So let me move on to the next sort of part of this discussion, which is, I really apologize for my dog. My kids are supposed to be keeping him quiet. We know, which we all know doesn't work these days, right? We know that women often get involved politically because of an issue that they care about, right? And so we're particularly moved by Cassie Levesque, who's a Girl Scout whose Gold Award project involved a campaign to end child marriage in New Hampshire, which I just learned about. It's still legal in some places. It sort of blows your mind. At the time, a state senator said he saw no need to change the 100-year-old law, quote, on the basis from a minor doing a Girl Scout project. So a couple of years later, she ran for the state legislature and she won, making her the youngest female representative elected in 2018 as to a state legislature. So, you know, that's an inspiring story that we can be thinking about. And I'm going to turn this next question to Kat and Sarah. What are some tips for women who want to use their leadership skills to make an impact on policy through advocacy work and lobbying? So like Cassie started out as an advocate and then she then transitioned. And so if you could both frame the discussion in that way. I don't know who wants to start. Go ahead, Kat.
Sure. There's so many things you can do. So, you know, there's everything from paying attention to what's happening in your state legislature or your city council or even Congress, and not just calling and writing letters or visiting their offices yourself, but get a team together, get your Girl Scout troop together, get your family together, and you can go. They work for you. Even if you aren't old enough to vote, they work for you, and you can go and you can advocate, and you can flood their office with phone calls and say, I really care about this issue. But you can do other things. So in most cities and states, you can put measures on a ballot, so you can decide, I really want, the menstrual product one is a great one. I really want better access to menstrual products in public high schools. And then you can write a ballot measure and go around town and get people to sign enough signatures for you to put it on the ballot. And then you can campaign and advocate and try to get people to vote for it. And if you succeed, then you've changed a law in your city or your county or your state, and you can do that. So there are a lot of different ways that even without running for office, you can make a big impact. You can also pay attention to, oh, my state legislator is trying to pass a bill for better, I don't know, family paid leave or something, and I really care about that. And you can support her and get involved with her office, and again, call all of her constituents and say, oh, call your state legislator and try to get them to pass, and etc. So there are so many different ways that without running you can get involved. And then here's the great thing: if you get a ballot measure passed, then you can put that on your resume when you run for office and say, hey, I've already been successful. Or if you help your local official pass something that they really care about, then when you run for office, they might endorse you. So it can even build your resume for when you're ready to run for office yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Well, the other things that I was thinking about were, one, there are probably some community organizations that are working on issues that you care about already. You don't have to always reinvent the wheel. So if it's the environment, if it's voting rights, if it's any number of things, you can find people who are already working on this right there in your community, and they're always looking for volunteers. They're often super excited about young people getting involved because it's not super common, actually. And then the other thing is that a lot of places have, in local government, or especially like school boards, have like official youth leadership positions of some kind, either like an advisory council or like a student representative or something like that. You usually don't have like voting power, but they will listen to you, and you get to know about what's going on and convey the perspectives of students at these really important decisions. So that's another way to get started right away.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn to Erin Cutraro, because you talked about sort of starting, some women have never thought about running, and sort of that sort of top of the funnel piece of it. So can you talk about then the next step? So if you're advocating for an issue, or you've been involved, how do you then start to think, what are some practical first steps? And in your answer, I see a question in the chat about giving more examples about what is meant by local office specifically, because everyone knows about councilor, mayor, but might not know about school board and some others. So if you could maybe answer that while you're answering my question as well, it'd be great.
Sure. So, so forgive me, because I was thinking of the second part of the question. The first part of the question is.
Sorry, I threw you a curveball.
That's right. I know. I was like, here she goes. She's bringing me something else.
Yeah. So no, it's basically how if you're thinking about running for office, one, just framing what some of those offices might be, and then how you might, what are your, sort of practical first steps?
Sure thing. So look, I think a great place to start, no matter where you are in caring about public service, is to start in a place and getting really centered in like the why. Why do you care? So often in public service, we're quick to jump to that place of like, which office? What office should I look for? And the reality is you can find that office, but first you have to figure out like what's your fire in the belly that makes you want to do that extra work. Because it's like, let's be real, Erin said it, a lot of these local roles are not well paid, and they do take time. And there is like wonderful give back and purpose involved in public service, but you also have to want to get out of bed every day and do it. So that can be everything from your school board to a local commission to a water board to you name it. I highly encourage folks to look especially at the municipal, like off election, so you won't see them on your ballot a lot in the on cycle, like right in an on cycle year, but you know, those lesser known about elections, like who are those folks? Do your research, look at what they're responsible for, what decisions they're making, how they make decisions, who's involved. There are so many options that, you know, you can find your way from something that if you care about.
I think we might have lost her. Is she frozen to everybody else?
Yes.
Okay. So if she comes back to us, we'll circle back to her. But in the meantime, Erin Velarde, I was going to ask you the same question as sort of like practical first steps for people who are thinking about running for office. And particularly, I know you have a program called Run As You Are, if I got that right. And so maybe you talk about that and sort of tie it into, I know the Girl Scouts have a similar sort of be authentic kind of piece of it.
Well, one of the exciting things is that the days are over of having to feel like you've got to fit into a very particular mold. And that is everything from, you know, a certain education type to clothing to age, you know, this surge of young women of color who are running for the highest offices. You know, I think there is just a new sort of look and feel, right? And that's the manifestation of women who are really running as you are. You don't, you know, you get to sort of come to the table with the skills that you have, with the life experiences that you have, because we don't need 150 lawyers for 151 seats, right? We need different professions. We need someone who's a hairdresser who knows how to talk to their community. These are invaluable skills. And so really rethinking, and that's research out of the Barbara Lee Family Foundation. How do we rethink our own resumes and our own life experiences and just start to flip on its head what we think our weaknesses are and say, no, that's actually a strength. You saw it very much when women who were victims of sexual assault following the Me Too movement, putting that actually in their campaign ads and speaking about it as a place of strength is something they've overcome. And that everybody was so nervous about how that was going to land. And it was highly emotionally resonant because it was authentic, it was true. And it just allowed for a different kind of conversation. And I think the voters are very, very thirsty for that. And our girls are very thirsty for that. They want to see us bring our full selves to the table. They don't want to see parts of us showing up in leadership. They want to see all of us. So that's really the Run As You Are mantra. And I know, Erin, we lost you. So if I can kick it back to you for the like.
I'm sure you summed it up beautifully.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about I'm going to miss some of these local offices, but you know, the idea is that, you know, as Kat talked about, and Sarah, we have appointments, right, that are local offices, which your mayor or usually your governor or the executive of your county can appoint. And so getting that resume together, putting that forward is a great thing to do. And that's very part-time. That's a good way to just get involved. You don't have to do the campaigning side. But, you know, thinking about the school board, there are 90,000 school board seats across the country. We're thinking about 42% women. It'd be great if that could be a majority female office within the next, you know, 5 to 10 years and get us running for the school boards. And that, you know, you're doing everything. You care about school lunch, you know, you care about the curriculum, you care about the, you know, the Zoom thing. Right now, we need people who are digitally and tech savvy and who understand different learning platforms should be sitting on our school board. So again, always just rethinking and framing, you know, the differences that we're bringing as positives.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. We're getting a few questions. I have a couple more of my own moderator questions. We are getting a few questions that I want to pose to you from the audience because it's for clarifying. And you know, one person asked, "Are there any local offices that are less in the public eye?"
I would say the county commission is kind of a more quiet office. I don't know if anyone would agree, but the county commissions do have a, you know, they have a less complaint box sort of, right? And county commissions are very well paying. And the good thing about county commissions is billions of dollars flow through the counties around infrastructure projects. So if you're really somebody who cares about the kind of health of your community in that way, the county commission is a well-paying, you know, it has a lot of power. and is less like the I'm going to knock on your door when my trash isn't getting picked up, right? So because people are a little less aware of it, and it's, you know, it's a little bit more of the infrastructure projects than the day-to-day. So that would be something I would consider. And county commissions have very, very few women on them, and county commissions in rural communities are almost overwhelmingly male and overwhelmingly white. And so we really need more women on our rural county commissions.
Great idea.
I would throw into, there are, and this is a thing that's not great for sort of civics in general, but great if you're looking to be sort of underground. There are a ton of local offices no one's ever heard of before. So, you know, there are some big ones like city council or mayor, everyone knows who you are, but, you know, I just voted. I am a lawyer who works in voting full time, and there was a water reclamation board position on my ballot. I didn't know what it was. I had never heard of it. None of the candidates had websites. I was like, I don't know what this is. So, you know, and look, that's partially on me, but partially it's a big city. You can't know everything. And so there are a lot of different positions like that. And, you know, like the board of supervisors is a very important position, right? It runs your county. In some areas, like I live in the biggest county in the country, we still don't know who our board of supervisors are as much as we should, but it's a bigger position. But there are a lot of more rural areas and smaller towns where the board of supervisors is important and no one has ever heard of them. So there are a lot of things that, you know, you don't have to be as worried. And one day we'd love for everybody to know all of these positions, but the fact is we don't pay as much attention to local government. And so you can run for these offices that are really important and that have such a big impact, but that people really aren't paying as much attention to as they should be.
Yep. Go ahead, Sarah.
I couldn't agree more with everything that was just said. I would say that, and this is almost advice to myself, that I would challenge people who are worried about being in the public eye and having sort of public facing roles to think about whether that's something that is truly who they are, or if it's something that they've been kind of taught to feel and to be afraid of, because we know that not a lot of women are running for office in the numbers that we want to see. And it's not necessarily because women aren't suited for it or like always want to be behind the scenes, but often that's what we think. And so if you don't want to be super public, that's totally fine, but think about whether that's really what you want.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great advice. Yeah. And I would say, so one practical bit of advice is you all should go home and research all these different positions and learn everything, right? And, you know, and you'll know more. It'll be a great cocktail conversation over, you know, Zoom events. You'll be someone who actually knows.
I was going to add, Jean, I recently lived in kind of this smaller, amazing community that was highly politically active, and there was this woman who decided that she was going to research all of the local offices that touched this area, and it was a really big project, and she was immediately the most popular person at every event, because it was basically like, would you please tell me what that role is, what it does, who's running for it. So I mean, what an amazing service to your neighbors too, for you to be the one that does the legwork on it.
Absolutely. Great idea. So then you all are going to be experts. Fantastic. So let me ask all of you this question. So right now, one person actually from the audience did have a question about running for office during COVID times, which I will just say, my organization and several other organizations are offering campaign trainings that focus on how to run in the new world that we're all living in. So you should, for more background information, I would encourage you to check us all out, all of our organizations. But sort of related to that, in the current moment, getting engaged, if you're not already politically engaged, feels really daunting, right? So what tips would you offer the audience in terms of getting engaged right now from their living room, or from a social distance, and they're, you know, talking to their neighbors? What can they do to get started? And we've touched on some things, but I don't know who wants to start.
Well, I can jump in really quickly because speaking of COVID times, you are all right now. First of all, you're engaged if you're watching, so congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, you, like me, are probably at home in your pajama pants because it's COVID. So it's really easy to get engaged because all the candidates are doing virtual events. I probably attend 1 million virtual events a week. It's really easy to log in. It's really easy, you know, you can see who's running in your area. and then go on their website and say, oh, they've got a virtual event tomorrow. They're usually free, or there'll be a very inexpensive student cost of, $10 or something. And you can watch and you can put in questions in the chat and talk to the candidate. They also are looking for virtual volunteers. So text banking, which is great. You text. I'm an introvert. I don't do phone banking. I don't talk to strangers ever. Text banking, I love. You can just text people. Or you can, there are people who are doing lit drops, which basically, instead of canvassing another introvert's nightmare, you just drop literature at someone's door and then run away before you get COVID, right? And so there are a lot of things that you can do right now. It's also, this is something that is evergreen. There is always an election. Every day is election season. No matter where you are, there's going to be an election tomorrow. And so there will always be people you can support. And during COVID, everything's virtual, so it actually makes it a lot easier in a lot of ways, because you can do it from home.
Right. Thank you. Sarah, were you gonna jump in there?
Yeah, so the point that, well, we're all here now and we're all engaged, like, absolutely, that was something that was on my mind as well. One thing that I sometimes worry about is spending more time virtual than before, and like, I already have to do it for work. Many of you might have to do it for school, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do it for this event also. But the events and things like events like this, even, I always find them energizing and exciting and invigorating and get me excited about the world and being part of a larger community in a way that makes it worth it, even if you're feeling that Zoom fatigue.
Thank you. Other practical tips? I'm looking at the errands.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are so many ways that you can get involved right now, but I would say that the level of access that everybody has across the board in this time is really special. I think back, and I'm always advising students that I talk to, that you have this special time when you're a student that you can sort of go to your teachers, go to your professors ultimately, and ask like any question, because you're the student and you have a license to do that, and you feel like at some point in your life you feel like you don't have that same permission. I feel like COVID offers that same permission to step into spaces that you normally would be like, either I don't know if I have time, or I don't know if I belong in this room, and you just like pop up on the screen and there you are. And I have found, just personal experience, things like attending my kids' school board meetings, where normally it's so challenging to find that time and to like show up there, and I can't get childcare. And now, guess what? I'm finishing work and listening to school board meeting. And it's a beautiful thing because I feel connected. And I think that is true of getting involved politically. That is true of being able to volunteer time and volunteer your talent to things that you care about right now. While there is such thing as Zoom fatigue, it is a gift that we have the access that we do right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I'll second that. And just a quick resource we have on the Vote Run Lead website is something called the 90-Day Challenge, and it is 30 actions in 90 days. And it was built by a bunch of local electeds who recognized that women were saying, okay, I'll run, right? The big change, I think, after 2016 that many of us in our organizations witnessed was women were raising their hands to run with less of a plan, which was exciting, right? And so I was like, okay, how do you build that political capital? How do you figure out what seat to run for? What are the questions and prompts that you ask yourself when you are asking why am I doing this, right? And so that sort of guided how did other women come to it. Finding out how much that local race costs. Kat mentioned they're not expensive. Sometimes they're $1,500. Sometimes they're just some sweat equity and a couple of flyers. So I'm just getting that, like, demystifying what it takes, and spending, dedicate on your calendar an hour a week to say, I am going to put an hour a week into my political leadership. I don't know what that means. I'm going to start myself down a rabbit hole, and hit the timer, and the hour will go off quicker than you presume. So that's just the more you start to investigate, the more you'll see communities like ours, and those of us on the call who are really creating new content to meet this Zoom moment, to meet this digital moment, and say, hey, here are the little piecemeal ways in which you don't have to spend 3 days with us anymore. Now you can actually get these little nuggets of information along the way.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of really great questions from the audience, and one theme that I'm seeing is, the idea about time commitment and what you need to be thinking about if you're going to run for office or serve in office. Can you do it if you have a demanding full-time job and serve at the same time? You know, if you've got young children. I mean, these are all the stories we've all heard multiple times, right? So what does it look like? I don't know if any of you want to give a little bit of perspective on what people can expect or should be thinking about when they're making that choice.
I mean, I think someone mentioned it earlier, but the good news about local office is that it's very, very part-time. I mean, there is still work to do, and it is still on top of everything else you're doing in your life. But you don't have to, say, live in DC half the time or something like that, right? It's like infrequent meetings right in your neighborhood, you know. So that part makes it a little bit easier for the local offices, at least.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you know, look, for some of these local offices, and I think Erin mentioned this earlier, you know, it might, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of connecting with your neighbors, your constituents, but you have, it's on your time. You have the time to figure out how to fit that in your schedule, and you can absolutely do that and have a demanding job, and we need more women who do, and it's a huge ask to make of women to offer that time as well. But those who do it often find that the reward is so great in opening up that time that it helps them in other parts of their life. It might help them professionally in their other career path. It might help them make connections in their neighborhood in a stronger way. So I think time is a real flag. People talk about it all the time, but I like they talk about it as a barrier. And I think if you force yourself to sort of write down, you know, those moments that you could open up, where could you build in a little bit of extra, or where could you maybe like slice a little something that isn't you're spending a lot of time on, but maybe you don't need to spend a lot of time on, you probably will find that you can open up enough time to, you know, to build in what will be a very rewarding choice.
And what are those boundaries for you? You know, one of the biggest tips that we hear from women electeds across the country is, you know, they went gung-ho for the first year or 18 months and they got a little frazzled, and then they, you know, took the advice of some of their wise sages and decided that they're not going to do stuff on Sundays, you know, or they're only, you know, they're really going to set boundaries in the way that we have to do it in other parts of our lives. And so going in with, you know, putting in our campaign plans, holidays and vacations and children's birthdays and that kind of perspective in how we build out who we want to be as campaigners and who we want to be as people who govern. Because what you'll also find is that the men will appreciate that as well, right? They'll appreciate that kind of change in culture that women can bring to some of these political bodies.
I agree. Here's a great question we get often, or I've heard a lot, I'm sure you all have too, which is about imposter syndrome. And it's actually related to another question someone had about, you know, if you have a lot of experience in this other field, how do you need to get more experience in politics before you jump in? I mean, how do you, you know, and I think we hear that a lot, right? That you feel like you need to get a bachelor's degree in political science before you run for office, although political scientists are probably least suited to run for office. And my political scientist friends will tell you that it's true. You know, so I think those are intertwined. They're two different questions, but this idea of how do I know I'm qualified to run, and how do I feel qualified to run, and do I need to know everything before I run? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple. First of all, here's the thing about imposter syndrome. Every woman I've ever spoken to who's been like worried about not being qualified is the most qualified woman in the room. I generally assume that I'm the smartest person in the room, and that's almost always true. Like it's every time I have a friend who is afraid she isn't good enough to run, or afraid she isn't good enough for this job or whatever, you look at everyone, you're so obviously more qualified for this than everyone else. It's also much more difficult for women to get elected and get great jobs. So if you're in that room, you earned it, and you know you earned it. Unless you blatantly lied on your resume, you know you deserve to be there. Another great way to know that you don't have to know everything is look at basically any politician who has any job. Look at their Twitter feed. They don't know anything. Right? They
know some stuff, some of them.
Damaging, right? But it's you can just look at people who have held office before, and you know, you have probably watched your TV and said, oh, I could do this better, right? Like, you know, you can. When you are in office, even local office, you have support, and the higher you get, you have aides, you have people. The governor doesn't know every single thing about every single issue in your state. He's got full teams of people who are helping him do that. And if a man thinks that he can be governor and not know everything and have teams of people helping him, then a woman can too. So I think, we tend to get into our heads a lot, and to not have the, you have to be a little cocky to run for office. Like, you have to believe I'm so great. People want to give me their money and their time and their vote because I'm amazing. I'm obviously going to be the best at this. So look in the mirror and just tell yourself you're incredible. Look at you. You're gorgeous. You're Wonder Woman. And just say that every morning, because 99% of the time, if you don't think that you're the smartest or you're good enough, you're probably the best, most qualified person in the room, or the person who cares the most, or the person who's going to do the most homework, right? Or the person who's going to sit down and spend that extra time that the other candidate won't, or the other person who is looking for that job won't. You know you, and you know how you work, and you know that you probably are way more qualified than you think you are.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kat. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that, or. Perfect, right on the note. I'm going to actually play that as a recording for myself before I go to all kinds of
You are Wonder Woman. Yes.
Every morning in the
So Sarah, I'm going to direct this audience question to you because it asks about college students, and in your organization will be really helpful. What positions would you consider suitable for a college-age student interested in getting involved in local government?
It sort of depends on what the rules are locally. So I know that in a lot of places, you just have to be 18 or 20 to run for certain offices. And so anything that you legally qualify age-wise is open to you, and you should consider that. It also can sometimes vary depending on whether you go to school like in your hometown or if you've moved away to college. And that if you did move away, that can present its own set of issues if people see you as an outsider, or maybe you're the person who can represent the people who are students at your school who typically aren't included in conversations at the local level. So there's different elements to consider, but if you're old enough, then you can do it.
Fantastic. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts. I certainly know many stories of, college students or, young people who were on the school board in my town or running for council. So there are far more young people running for office than there ever have been before. So we need people of all ages to run, and especially the perspective. So let me see what some of the other questions that we have are about. Getting involved. This person has a question about, just having recently gone into one community, basically, might be living in one area, but potentially moving. Is there a way to get involved, even if you're not sure how long you'll be somewhere, or, the other piece of that is, or you don't have deep roots in the community, like maybe you just moved there and you're not, long time. So thoughts about that?
I can jump in on that because I just moved to a new community and I'm trying to map this out myself. I have found that that the process of finding just a couple of people who are well connected, maybe they're people who have worked on campaigns or who run organizations or clubs or groups that align with what you care about, and just being honest with them that, like, look, I'm trying, it's like back to that, what you can ask of a teacher, like, I'm just trying to understand how this works. Who are the people that I should know? It is amazing the like wealth of information that you can get if you just ask those questions. And really, I think when you're new to a community and you don't have deep roots, like, it's okay, just be honest about that. Say, I'm trying to figure it out. Even if you do have deep roots and you've just newly found a voice in it, like, talk to folks and say, I'm just trying to get more involved. Who are the people that I know? Who are the movers and shakers? Who are the folks who are connected? So just ask the questions. I find that you can get sort of paralyzed in is there a website that's going to tell me all of this information? And the answer is likely no. But if you can just engage in some conversation, and it doesn't have to be a lot of conversation, just to get rolling, you can figure out a lot.
Yeah.
Erin's right. Mapping, the word she used that was really key was map it. Really, put it down on a piece of paper and, do a little bit of the internet sleuthing on like who's the ED or who's the community coordinator for your YWCA, your United Ways are fantastic. Your women's foundation, your community foundation, your chamber of commerce, really just identifying some of those traditional players. And from there, you're sort of, LinkedIn your way. In the 90-day challenge, we used to have 15 coffees. Schedule and try to get to 15 coffees. Maybe you get to 8, but like you're still expanding your network. In the sort of digital COVID space, if you can go for walks with people, if you can not ask for a Zoom and ask for a regular phone call, like I'll call you. People love that. They like I want to call and talk to people. I don't want to FaceTime you. I don't want to have to put on this lipstick. I've never worn so much lipstick in my life, except on Zoom, right? So it's a give people just different ways, offer them up different things. Can we do something socially distanced? Can we, 6 feet apart and have this chat? So, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? And then one of the things that a girlfriend of mine came up with, she calls it the Dory rule. Dory from Finding Nemo, and she sort of repeats her question over and over. When you're sending an email to someone and you're asking them for advice or you're asking them to meet and they don't respond to you, it is not because they hate you or they're not interested. It is because they are just plain busy or they forgot. I had a woman respond to me almost a year later and she was like, I am so sorry. And I was like, girl, it's okay. Yeah, I'd love to join the, sort of a list group. And so just ping them a second time, put it on the top of your, putting this on the top of your inbox. I'm really interested in connecting with you, and don't apologize. Just ask again like Dory as if it's the first time you're asking. There's some statistic, and I have to find it, that men will do that 4 more times than women will do it. And that's really the only reason they're getting the response is the frequency, not that the person isn't interested in connecting.
Great, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts. We have about 2 more minutes left. I did want to just address very quickly that a couple of people asked about fundraising. And as we all know, and it's a different sort of question in this moment, right? Because there's fundraising in general, which we all know nobody likes to do, right? Nobody likes it. Even the best political fundraisers I have met. I mean, some people literally love to do it, but most elected officials, even if they're good at it, really don't enjoy it. So I mean, I don't know if there's a real question here, except to say, don't be afraid of this, that kind of a thing, and that you can get training on it, and it's something you just have to do, and you can't be sort of deterred by that. And COVID makes it more complicated. This is a weird time to fundraise, right? But I don't know if anyone has any sort of inspirational thoughts about not being afraid of raising money. Sarah, and then Kat, over to you.
I think one common hang up people have is that they are nervous or feel weird about asking money for themselves because they feel like they don't deserve it, or they don't like putting the spotlight on themselves, even though they're the ones running. So if you can kind of in your head flip it and say to yourself, I'm not asking this money for me, I'm asking for this money so that I can go be the elected official who will serve the community best. And like, this is the cause that I am asking people to support, not me personally, but like what it is I bring to leadership in our community.
Thank you, Sarah. Kat?
Okay, I'm gonna be the weirdo here, but fundraising is a blast. So here's the thing, and most of us, we have to fundraise every day. It's my job. I run an organization, or 2 organizations. I have to fundraise, and I love it. And I'm always the one when we do events for candidates who is the closer, right? Because it's a blast. I believe so much in what I do every day. And I believe so much in the candidates we're supporting that I love asking people for, hey, will you donate $20 so that I can, get an idea or help someone vote or change climate change or whatever, And I think that one of the things that you learn the more you do it, and when you start, it's scary, but people love donating to things they care about. People love donating to people they care about. There are people who donate over and over and over again to candidates because they're like, I just love her and she's so great and I believe in her. And it's the way that they can contribute. And it actually, you build these great relationships. I have donors who I'm friends with and we hang out or we talk all of the time, or they're really supportive. And, it is actually, I love pitching people. I love talking to them about what we do. I love asking people for money for things because I only fundraise for things I really care about and believe in, for things I'm really excited about. And I think if you think about it like that, and look, I believe in myself. I believe in myself more than anyone or anything except Robert Redford. And so I love asking people for money to support me. I'm awesome. I'm floored anytime people don't just walk by me and hand me cash for being amazing. You know, like, believe in yourself. And here's the thing, and this is another thing, men don't have problems believing that they're the greatest thing that like was ever born. So men don't have, all of my male friends who are running for office are constantly texting me, asking me for money. My female friends who are running for office, they're never asking me. And I know them. We may text for hours about everything under the sun and they don't ask. Believe in yourself. This goes right hand in hand with the imposter syndrome thing. You're incredible. You're going to do amazing things for your community. People will want to donate to you because they're going to love you. So don't be afraid to ask.
Well, that is the perfect note to end on, and I'm going to be calling you for our next fundraising campaign, Kat. But no, I love the idea of reframing it, right? And I think that's what we're talking about, all of this, in fundraising and thinking about running for office and making a difference for a community. It's reframing the way that you're thinking about it and knowing that you can do it, and you can make an impact in so many different ways. I want to thank all of you so much for being here. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the audience has. It's been a great discussion, and I know I would say to the audience, follow all of these women on various social media platforms, you know, look them up, look their organizations up. They're all doing such terrific work, and we're grateful. And with that, we will say thank you to all of you and to the audience for being with us tonight. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Good night.
You're a great moderator.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
And thank you, everyone, for inviting the Girl Scout Network into your homes. We'll be hosting a wide variety of campfire chats, so be sure to stay up to date with our offerings on girlscouts.org/campfire chats. In the meantime, you can support Girl Scouts by becoming an adult member for $25, which helps to fund our work of building the next generation of female leaders. The link has been posted in the chat log and will also be included in the follow-up email to today's event. In addition, as we mentioned in the chat log, Girl Scouts is launching new civics badges for grades kindergarten through 12 this year. Through this work, girls gain an in-depth understanding of how local, state, and federal governments work, prepare them to be voters, activists, and potentially political leaders. For those of you who want more information, we will share the link in our thank you email as well. These badges were also launched in partnership with Citi Foundation. The Citi Foundation's More Than Philanthropy approach leverages the expertise of Citi to fulfill their missions and drive thought leadership and innovation. For more information, visit citifoundation.com. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we look forward to welcoming you back at our next event.